Hello and welcome to Estuary TV News with me, James Dunn. I hope you're enjoying your bank holiday weekend. It's our weekly paper review today, and here with me I've got Leah Nietzsche, who's the executive producer of Estuary TV. Welcome to us today, Leah.
Thanks, James. Nice to see you.
So, what have you looked at in the news this week? What's been the big stories?
I mean, obviously, the first thing to start talking about is obviously UKIP's performance.
And that's been in all the papers, hasn't it?
Exactly. And obviously, UKIP has been talking to people in the way that they feel they want to go. I think quite often that's about the amount of media coverage they get.
I mean, it's interesting that because they've got a different message perhaps to the other parties. So they have got, there's no denying that this year they've got a huge amount of coverage. And, this local elections, they've taken seats across the region, really, haven't they? They took a seat in Hull from a very, very long-serving councillor, former Lord Mayor. They've taken seats in North East Lincolnshire. And, I mean, it's easy to see why, is it? Or
yeah, I mean, I think quite often at sort of these stages, as far as the national elections are concerned, I think people will always put a protest vote in at about this time in this sort of area of Parliament sort of running things. But I think also that people have really suffered with the recession, and again I think quite often that parties like UKIP have been able to say, well, let's get out of Europe, it's costing us too much money, or they're making decisions for us that perhaps we should be making ourselves. And I think especially in our areas, there's a lot of discussion about immigrants coming in, jobs are difficult for people to get, but I think it's potentially could be quite an issue and quite dangerous because what other messages are UKIP actually going to be fighting for, apart from the in-out independence as far as Europe's concerned? Do we know about any of their other policies? And I think that's something that is quite concerning. One of them, from my point of view, is that at a national level, UKIP are saying that they want to actually privatise the NHS. I'm not quite sure how much of the electorate actually understand that and the implications. So, I'm half Italian, so I'm not anti-Europe at all.
And this is a port town. A lot of our trade obviously relies on probably the European Union. But what has been interesting about this area is you picked up on the fact that people often put in a protest vote the year before the national elections. So usually in the past, if there's been a Tory government, then Labour have done well at a local level, whereas they've taken seats from Labour here, and they've always been seen as the right-wing party, but they've actually taken seats from left-wing parties. So I think
it's worrying. I personally find it incredibly worrying that the electorate would want to go for a more extreme, more right party. Again, I'm not sure really whether people really do want that. But it is concerning because I think a lot of their views are very worrying. Obviously, Nigel Farage has got a lot of press, and potentially could we say that it's bordering racism? We live in a global.
Of course, they would definitely argue that they're not, and particularly local level, UKIP. But I mean, their policy is supposedly Europe, but here at a local level, then they will be expected to act on a much more grassroots level. So I suppose it will be interesting to see how that pans out and whether they prove that they can do that. Or
well, when I voted last week, there was a UKIP representative at the polling station.
They've certainly
How often do you see that? Where were the other representatives as well? I know that perhaps it's you've got to be there until 10 o'clock at night, and perhaps they were represented at different times in the evening. But after week, as a family, we went to vote, and the UKIP representative was there.
And what people will say is, if there's anything positive to come out of this, then it will be perhaps a bit of a wake-up call to the main parties.
Yeah, and the great thing is, if you want to actually get your feelings actually vented, you need to go and vote. So, more people voting can't, there can't be anything wrong with that, can there?
Message to everyone there from Estuary TV. So what else have we got in the news? What else has caught your eye?
I think the other thing that really has caught my eye, and it's a really, really sad story, but how often do we hear about it over and over, is Caitlin Smith's death being knocked over in Scorby.
Very near a school as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it's so sad, and those momentary decisions or things that happen that have a massive and terrible impact on everybody's lives who are linked with it, not only the family of the person who's been killed, but also the person who was driving the car, and whether somebody was reckless or if it was just a pure accident or a momentary decision. That will stay with you forever, and the ripple effect that it has is really, really sad. And similarly, in Viewpoint as well, in the Grimsby Telegraph, there was a car accident at Healing Village in the school run. So I think our lives are so fast at the moment, and I think people, when they're cocooned in their cars, really don't realise that the impact of just being that little bit too fast, rushing to work, dropping the children off, you're late, all those kinds of things, that perhaps we should have a go slow campaign in this country.
And of course we hear about it over and over again, and this go slow campaign actually has gained quite a lot of steam. It's probably not the right way to put it, but it's become quite popular around this area in particular. People are talking about 20 miles per hour zones around school, but of course it's easy to assume it's the motorist's fault. And it could, and certainly in this case, I don't think that is certainly not proven that that's the case at the moment. And it's easy to say, should more be done, but should more be done to?
Well, I think quite often I think schools as well as parents have a great role to play, and organisations like the Scouts and Guides and Brownies and things like that, where quite often I think our children are growing up playing out less, rightly or wrongly. They see the world through very safe environments, through the internet, and I think I'm so old now that when I was at school there was cycling proficiency, there was the Green Cross Code Man.
Still cycling proficiency. What's the Green Cross? The Green Cross Code Man?
Don't you know the Green Cross Code?
Well, I know the code, but there was
there was a man. He was a superhero, David Prowse, who became Darth Vader.
Wow.
I think that was his first big media job, and the Central Office for Information films, that when we were children, before they were sort of on television regularly, we would go into the assembly hall and lights would go down and then films would be played, and some of them were absolutely terrifying, but the ones that were fantastic were things like the Green Cross Code Man, who used to come as a superhero. And maybe that we need more momentum like that, because I think quite often young people don't realise, because we regularly see cars going very quickly, that actually they're understanding that actually being even clipped by a car has devastating effects for everybody. So let's see if we can see more of that, and I think maybe that will help everybody's awareness.
Yeah, I mean certainly in schools I know they do work, but I can definitely say that when I was young, if Darth Vader had told me to look left and look right, I'd probably have taken notice.
He didn't look like Darth Vader, and certainly I'm sure if we had a new Green Cross Code Man,
maybe it could be.
I think the mothers would be very happy to see a Green Cross Code Man come and visit, because he was very, very lovely, as well as carrying a safety message.
Before he lost all his limbs. So what else have we got in the news?
I think as well another story about our riverhead in Grimsby, about how obviously the warm weather has made
this is of course a letter that was in the Grimsby Telegraph about the riverhead.
Yeah, no, it's quite interesting that obviously when the weather gets warmer, the algae grows and it looks very green and slimy. And
which is sad because it's the summer.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, what I think what's quite interesting is you go to most other large towns and cities around the UK, and they really do treasure their waterfront. We don't do that as a matter of course, really, in Grimsby, and where potentially there could be you know, beautiful walks, cycle paths, places to go and eat, places to take your children to do things. We have the backs of supermarkets and wasteland and discount stores, and you know, maybe hopefully maybe as part of the town plans in the future that will be something that will change, but it's a real shame because I think you know, the River Freshney in that area could be really, really lovely, and we should cherish it a little bit more, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. And now another story that you pointed out to me earlier was this one, which is about an oil drilling site, an exploratory drilling site near Donington-on-Bain, near Louth. It's not the only one we've heard about in the area, but it's not the oil exploration that worries people, is it?
No, it's to frack or not to frack, isn't
Indeed.
it, really? Nobody knows anyone's fracking business, do they? So I think you know, that again, there are a few media panics going on out there. I mean, and you know, if it is in your doorstep, you are going to be
you would be
concerned.
worried because fracking, you know, there's been cases of it poisoning the water supply, you know, leaving a devastating effect on the environment.
Well, so they say. I'm not sure whether anything's been proven as yet, but
no.
you know, people do get...
Well, abroad, not in this country,
no.
perhaps.
Obviously, lots of big American stories, aren't there?
Yeah, but I mean...
But I think it seems to be that the geology in our part of the country seems to potentially indicate some oil potential. Fantastic for those landowners, I'm sure, who might have oil. Sadly, I don't own enough land to potentially reap the benefits of the oil. But no, I think obviously there's oil exploration going on, and we know in East Yorkshire and in Lincolnshire that people are getting worried and saying, look, we don't want people
say
fracking.
Just assume, and because of course they all say this is not a fracking site, and maybe they're to be believed. But certainly people are suspicious, aren't they?
Yeah, I think you know, I think companies quite clearly have come out and said we are not looking to frack and that we are not fracking. I don't know what more they can say really at the moment. But you know, I think people quite often get worried about conspiracy theories, and they do get very worried when there are large corporations who are there actually doing things.
Very opaque.
Yeah. So
hopefully they're telling the truth.
Yeah. Where are we going to get our energy from in the future if we don't explore all of the options? And certainly, I would rather we are mostly being able to get our energy from our own country rather than having to rely on other people with pipes in other countries who can switch us off if they want to, if they don't like us one day.
I think many people feel the same. Now, finally, we've not got long left, Leah, but there was something we looked at earlier, and this was kind of a sad story, but kind of a happy story, really, because it's about this man. He's 80 years old in the Grimsby Telegraph here, and he's got an email from someone purporting to be Revenue and Customs, saying that he's owed £469, and who wouldn't want to be owed £469 by Revenue and Customs? Yeah,
and it's interesting. In fact, over the last month, my own home email has been had lots of this phishing activity going on, and the tax office is the new one. There's also one that says that you're due in court and you have to bring all your ID and come to the London courts. And of course, for people that are maybe under 50 years old and are used to this kind of technology, you take it with a pinch of salt and say, oh no, it's another attempt for somebody to actually get your details.
The older generation.
Yeah, and I think for people who probably aren't used to using computers very often or are new into it, I think, obviously the guidance is that if it's somebody that you don't know or is pretending to know you, never respond, even if you're. I've heard of people actually responding saying stop, getting in touch with you. And quite often, a lot of these emails are just to get your details.
This guy obviously knows, and perhaps it's a sign that the tide is turning on that one.
Definitely. So
Brilliant. Well, thanks very much for coming in, Leah. That's all we've got time for, I'm afraid, today. Don't forget usual ways to contact us. Either email news@estuary.tv or contact us via our Twitter or Facebook pages. You can also pick up the phone and call us on 01472 315 561. Until tomorrow, goodbye.